Hi everyone, my name is John Hand with the Pulsing Cinema, and the movie of the day is Bill Lustig's Maniac. Not the new Maniac remake, reboot, or whatever with the starring the elf. No, I'm talking about the original 1980 horror sleaze slasher film serial killer masterpiece directed by Bill Lustig, who would go on to do Vigilante, Maniac Cop, Uncle Sam, and starring the great cinematic maniac himself, Joe Spinell. Oh my God, Joe Spinell, the life that Joe Spinell must have led before he became a film actor and gained prominence in the 70s. He drove a taxi cab. He did plays in the prisons. So many things before in the 70s he started getting film roles and bit parts in the Godfather films and started meeting producers like Elliot Kasner and William Friedkin and little bit parts in Friedkin's films like Cruising and Sorcerer. And he decided in the late 70s that he actually wanted to be the star. You know, he didn't want to be a bit player. He wanted to be the star. And he joined up with this guy, Bill Lustig, who had been making some porno films. And everybody threw their money together, and they made this New York serial killer film where Joe Spinell plays a guy, Joseph Zito, named after the director of Friday the 13th 4, the final chapter, Joe Zito. That's where they got the name. Apparently Bill Lustig knew him. He came in on New York just like everybody else, and they copped his name for this serial killer who goes around, he finds girls, he kills girls, and he scalps them, and then he nails the scalps to a mannequin that he arranges in his lair, his bedroom lair, a cavernous bedroom lair full of all this weird art and all this weird shit. He's a weird serial killer with mommy issues who has another voice in his head that tells him to go out and kill. And it keeps telling him, no, not tonight, not tonight. But, you know, he has this, again, this killing he has a consciousness, but he also has this killing part of him that wants to go out and kill women. And then he meets up with this one woman played by Caroline Munro, and they start up this strange, improbable relationship where Joe Spinell, you know, asks her out to eat, and they go out to dinner, and then everything is going fine until you know the crazy part, the mommy's telling me to kill part, or I want to kill mommy part is, I think he wants to kill mommy. That's his scene. The kill mommy part is coming out, and watch out, Caroline. So. Maniac is just a great film, a film that looks very sleazy and illegitimate. The special effects by Tom Savini, who has a little bit part, are incredible. The scalping effects are like, my God, you know, they look state of the art. I mean, even today they look so realistic, it's just hard to look at. The shotgun to the head is just like one of those moments of just extremity that is just, that's a horror film. That's a night of entertainment, you know. You know, lots of sleaze on hand, but the film is very well made. You know, it's a low budget 60mm horror film, but I think the talent and the resourcefulness of Bill Lustig comes out. I think the talent of Joe Spinell as this killer comes out because he is very charismatic, and he's not a very nice looking man, but he has just such a charisma, and he is invested in this role of this killer so much, and he goes so full into it that you have to go in full. And I mean, in some ways, Joe Spinell kind of disappeared into his role, and every subsequent character, almost every subsequent character he did, there was an element of the Maniac in it to an extent. You know, I mean, this is his most well-known part from there on, and he kind of lived out his career, you know, in these series of bit parts before he sadly passed away in the early 90s. You know, that's where it is, you know. And even he tried to make a little sequel to this, Mr. Robbie, the Maniac 2, but he only was able to make a small short film version of it, a promotional film, a promotional film in order to get financing. I think directed by Buddy Giovanazzo of Combat Shock, another great New York film. But you get a feel of the era, you know. I mean, New York in the late 70s and early 80s was, you know, to pull a quote from Bill Lustig's Vigilante trailer, it was an urban skyline of fear. It was an era of where there were real maniacs like David Berkowitz, Son of Sam, Joel Rifkin. Prostitutes and people on the wrong side of the law, they could just disappear. Law enforcement wouldn't care, you know. I mean, there were. I mean, Joel Rifkin, he was a serial killer, and you know, people would show up on the beach or in secluded areas, like, you know, thrown, you know, like with their throats slit almost, and they'd be deemed like a suicide. You know, the police just had such a volume of murders. I mean, it you know, New York and the New York area became like the murder capital of the world to an extent. For a certain period of time, it's definitely the murder capital of the country for a number of years there. It was a very dangerous era where these predators were just wide open, just going and taking out these vulnerable members of our society. And it was awful. I mean, who knows how many serial killers just disappeared into the darkness? Who didn't have the high profile of the Son of Sam or what have you. Probably many, and probably many people like Joe Spinell and Maniac. I mean, when they were doing Maniac, they did the scene at the beginning with the prostitute in the hotel room where he gets scalped. I mean, apparently, when they were shooting that, somebody's severed head showed up in a hotel room in that same hotel. I mean, it was crazy. And so this isn't Frankenstein, this isn't Dracula, this isn't some space alien. The character in Maniac, Joe Spinell, it was a very real threat in that era, and so the film felt very real, I think, to many people when it came out, and it shocked the hell out of many people, and it just kept getting more and more popular. There was a big you know, outrage when it came out, and it kind of went big, and it was released in the New York area, and there was a lot of protests and stuff, and the Blu-ray and the DVD kind of get into that a little bit. But it is a great early film for a really great, you know, grindhouse type filmmaker, Bill Lustig, who worked in the New York area, who, as I said, you know, lived on a diet of those type of 42nd Street horror and sci-fi and Drek, and then worked in the X-rated industry, and then, you know, created something that was so beautiful. But he also was very influenced by the Italian horror filmmakers, mostly, chiefly, probably Dario Argento. The film doesn't really look at. There's not really, you couldn't draw a big parallel between Dario Argento and Maniac. Though in some ways, you know, Maniac, you know, the main, you know, serial killer film that I think of when I think of Dario Argento from that time period is Tenebrae. And I would pick Maniac over Tenebrae. It's funny to think that early on in Maniac's the production, when it was just being announced and promoed, and that Dario Nicolodi, Dario Argento's wife and the star of his films like Deep Red and Tenebrae, Dario Nicolodi was actually announced as co-starring in the Caroline Munro role. But apparently there were problems, and she fell out, And then the producer's wife was Caroline Munro. Caroline Munro had a relationship with Spinell because they did Star Crash together, Stella Star, and she started it. And I mean, she's a really great presence. As unlikely a partner she makes for Joe Spinell, it would have been interesting to see what Daria Nicolodi would have done in that role, especially if she had not been dubbed. If you just would have heard her own voice. I don't think she's really ever done I don't think she definitely did not do a film role in that time period in English where you actually heard her own voice. I mean, she's dubbed in Tenebrae by someone who sounds like Teresa Russell, this really husky voice, and it just sounds horrible, you know. In the original Deep Red, you know, or Deep Red, the original English version of Deep Red, you hear her voice, and it's just like, wow, you know. That would have been an interesting little twist on it. But as I said, a great horror film. The first time I saw this was on VHS in my parents' bedroom because my VHS was busted, my VHS player. So it was a VHS I'd rented from a gas station about a half a mile down the street, and I was this really crappy 13-inch tube television, this old television. It was color. So, and it was just this horrible, really ragged VHS copy, and the film looked so gritty and illegitimate and just filthy, you know. But still was great. I'd already seen clips of it from Scream Greats, from Tom Savini's Scream Greats, where it showed off his stuff. It demoed his work from Maniac. But, you know, great DVD Laserdisc release from Elite Entertainment. That cut, the Elite Entertainment cut, and the original Anchor Bay DVD, Bill Lustig took out a scene. He took out the dinner scene between Caroline Munro and Spinell, and then the recent Blu-ray has added that back in, so it's the original theatrical cut. But that was kind of a weird deletion there. But in any case, great film, great recent Blu-ray. It's a really cool one to get, and a very spooky, scary movie about real life predators who were stalking the streets of New York in the early '80s, and probably some of them got away. Probably many of them got away, and they're probably still stalking around, roaming. So watch out, lock your doors, and put on that mildly reassuring film, the happy film, the happy, lovable Joe Spinell masterpiece, Maniac. Oh man, I love this movie.